person. Now, as I told you last time, I'm really trying to um, give you both tools for business and tools for self-development. And this really, it really is trying to combine what's great for work is great for you, and what's great for you is going to be great for work. So this is one of my favorite subjects about becoming a pro-growth person because really it talks about your whole framework in the way that you look at life and how you respond to challenges, either in a way that drives growth or a way that stifles growth. So let's look at what the research says. And this is pretty famous research by Dr. McAdams and Haidt about the development of our human personalities. And what they say is we start off with the genetic personality, and they find this with infants, that infants are either threat sensitive uh, or opportunity seeking. And what is meant by that is that you have infants or small children that are not very adventurous and they want to stay safe at all times. And then you have infants and toddlers who are just eating dirt and jumping off, buildings. You know what I'm talking about. Anybody who's had kids, really from the very beginning, there are people who tend to be cautious and people who tend to be adventurous. And by the way, what we know is this is genetic, and what we know is that people who tend to be adventurous really love novelty, and they don't have the same response to fear or threat that threat sensitive people have. In fact, and they get more dopamine and more endorphins and more positive uh, internal body chemistry by trying new things, taking risks, and they don't suffer as much pain when they fail because they're ready to start something new again. Then we know threat sensitive people tend to magnify the risks that are in our environment, and they also tend to ruminate more about risks that they take that don't work out. So those are genetic personalities. Now we can alter those, but they are pretty basic in how we're kind of wired from birth. And it's good to know which you are, and you can also be in the middle. It doesn't have to be one or the other. And I've had children that are a little more threat sensitive, and I have one child who doesn't recognize anything as a threat. So it's been an interesting wild ride. Um, so we go out of that state into our adaptive personality. And this happens right at birth too. And this means this is a personality that is responding to the environment. So we adapt to our environment to keep ourselves in in a state of both safety and opportunity to grow. That's what we want. And so if we're in a very comforting environment, a very positive environment, we'll tend to grow in really healthy ways. We'll tend to develop a greater sense of curiosity. We'll tend to laugh easily. We'll tend to be more relaxed. We'll tend to be more stress hardy. If we're in a very difficult environment where there's a lot of stress, going all the way to abuse, we'll probably have some unhealthy adaptation. Most unhealthy adaptations tend to be passive aggressiveness or fear or where you see threats in everything, or being very combative. So, and this doesn't just happen in early childhood, it happens actually throughout our life. Every environment calls on us to make a response, and we can either have a healthy response or an unhealthy response. So Keith Richards has a famous story. He was a very, very obedient child until he got into choir, went to religious school, got into choir when he was young, and was, a terrific member of the choir and had a great voice and so forth. And at the age of 13, his voice changed, and he was kicked out of the choir for no other reason that his voice changed. Now, of course, that also happened at the onset of testosterone, and Keith Richards became the wild man that helped make the Rolling Stones a rebellious icon, so to speak. So that's an example of an adaptation to an environment that is pretty extreme. And we all have adapted to our environments as we move through life. And some of those adaptations can be positive and some of them can be negative. Now, what happens as we go through life, we develop a life story, and that life story has a logic. And that logic says the way life works is. And if you're a growth oriented person, the way life works is that if you persist, if you learn, if you grow, if you keep trying, you become the hero of your story. If you've maladapted and you don't feel like there's anything you can do, so you're just a reactive person or you tend toward that, then you see yourself more as a victim. So if your boss isn't the greatest boss right now, or your home conditions aren't really great, there's often a feeling of futility, like, well, no bosses are really good. And I've always had a rough personal life, and it's always going to continue. So you have to really make sure that your life logic is a life logic that you choose and isn't just a reaction to your environment. And that's hard because we know from bias research that reacting to your environment is the most common way that we develop personality habits. So if you look at this research, this is from the University of Warwick in England, there's two dominant types of personalities, an optimistic personality and a pessimistic personality. And again, there's not very many people that are totally optimistic or totally pessimistic. A lot of it is also situational related. But on a continuum, there are people that are more optimistic and people that are more pessimistic. And we see that optimism really creates a cluster of traits and attributes that will tend to lead to a greater happy life and more productive life and a more well-adjusted life. So as you look, you can see resilience and people who can stay focused on their goals, people who are collaborative, creative, take initiative, solution-oriented. That's a big thing, is to be solution-oriented. Those are all adaptations that we can bring into any situation. So what we find, there's only about 10% of people who really maintain their strong personality no matter what the outside environment is. So there are some people that will be happy and optimistic no matter how terrible the circumstances are. There's also about 10% of people who will remain pessimistic and feeling a victim of hopelessness no matter how good things are. So we're probably in the middle, but if we use our minds, we can either put ourselves above the line or below the line. Now, one of the things that helps to be aware of where you need to put your energy is to be aware of how you feel about your environment, and particularly around the issue of fairness. So if you feel in any way that you're in a biased situation, so you could, right now gender bias is a big deal, but if you feel like you're in a disadvantaged group and that you don't have opportunities just because of who you are, and that there's a pattern of discrimination, norms, expectations, rewards, opportunities, recognition that are against you, if that's what you hold in your mind, whether it's true or not, it tends to lower your productivity and your proactivity and your productivity, and also your creativity. All those activities tend to be reduced, because if you feel like the world is rigged against you, or the workplace is rigged against you, or your family is rigged against you, you'll experience a lower sense of confidence, creativity, commitment to the group, and things like that. And what will go up, of course, are feelings of stress. Powerlessness is a big thing, because powerlessness leads to depression. You'll find yourself more sad and defensive more often, and a desire to escape. And that desire to escape can lead to all kinds of maladaptive behaviors, including addictions. So it's very, very important that you're aware of how your brain is describing the environment that you live in. And this is why. Basically, Dr. Richard Firestone has created this model of who you choose to be. And you're sort of wired in two directions again after all these influences. You're sort of wired for courage or wired for fear. And it's courage that takes you in the direction of your true self. It's courage that makes you want to make your difference. It's courage that gives you a positive, constructive personality. And a positive, constructive personality is exactly what I described. It's that you're positive about opportunities, you're positive about other people, you tend to be constructive, you're trying to build a better future not only for yourself and others. And this this translates into being really vision driven and proactive and resilient. And you're really focused on the contribution impacts that you can make. Now, your anti-self, which is really not a real part of your personality, it actually, according to Dr. Firestone, it's sort of a voice that we kind of know where it is. It's right below our neurocortex. That's where it emanates from. But it isn't really your source of identity. It's really a source of fear. And what that creates is a desire for approval. It creates a negative, destructive response. So you could be chronically sarcastic, or critical, or gossipy, or a lot of things that we don't admire. And it just it feeds self-doubt. It feeds self-indulgence. Self-indulgence simply means that you have a goal and you let yourself out pursuing that goal for some reason you've done that. It's the imposter syndrome, like whenever you get praise, you feel you don't deserve it. And then your life becomes visionless. You tend to become compliant. That means you just want to get along with whoever has the power, and the way you survive with in your relationships are passive aggressive. So we're not really born that way, nor are we really born the other way. But we are born with these two sort of sensitivities, this threat sensitivity or this opportunity seeking part of us. And we want to move to the opportunity seeking part of us with all the developmental tools that we can, because we're not just a product of our genes. And the common drivers that I have seen, and as you know, I've been doing this for decades, that people are most happy and most successful is this mantra. And I know it's really simple, and I know that some of you might even think it's silly, but it's not. What I have found is the most successful people I work with is they believe in their own brightness. And what I mean bright is in every way you can think of it. First of all, they think of themselves as bright in terms of, I'm smart, I can learn anything. And they're also bright when they walk in a room. It's like they're ready to say what's on their mind. Doesn't mean you have to be an extrovert. It just means that you're not afraid to say what's on your mind. Brave simply means that you're willing to rise from failure. So you're willing to take risks, and these can be measured risks. They don't have to be crazy risks, but because you know you can learn from that and turn failure into learning. And being true just simply means that you are committed to a set of values that describes you at your very best, and you're true to them. And that's a formula that I have found with really successful, happy people to be true in 100% of cases, at least in my experience. So now we have an assignment that I want you to do, and it's as I've sort of laid out this whole process of becoming a pro-growth person. We all have an inner story, and remember, the inner story is either whether we're a victim or a hero. And are there elements? So this is my first question: are there elements of your inner story that are keeping you from your highest and best aspirations? I'd like you to write down your inner story. What is the story of your life? What is the story of your present environment? Once you start that process, I'd like you to seek out the wisest person you know. This could be a relative or a friend who can help you think through what you might do to shift your self-perception and learn what you need to learn and start doing what you need to do to achieve your highest aspirations, not to settle for anything lower. And you might be in a good place, but you could be in a greater place, a better place. And that's what I want you to think about. Number 3, set up time to discuss and develop an action plan centered on your hopes and desires with your wise friend. I mean, really get into a coaching situation. And you don't have to follow their advice, but you're using them as a sounding board on whether you think that your advice to yourself, how they would judge it, and whether they think that's a good idea. Now, only you can really judge whether that would be successful for you. Nobody can give you a success formula that works for other people. All I can do is what I'm doing is sort of outline possibilities and what generally works and so forth. Number 4, what's the one brave thing you can do that will increase your confidence and increase what I call your best life in life? And a lot of us just get stuck in the status quo of whatever a life is, and we get used to it. We maladapt to the present circumstance. And if you were going to thrust yourself beyond that, what's one brave thing that you could do that you really ought to do? Now, the consequence of failure won't be that terrible. Maybe uncomfortable, but not terrible. That means you're going to be brave. But remember, even if you fail at that, you can learn. That's what growth is all about. Now, 5 is to give yourself the energy to do this. I'd like you to meditate every morning for the next week until you watch the next video. And write is really important. Meditate and write what it means to you to be bright, and you can learn anything, brave, you're willing to take calculated, smart risks, and true to the values of what you want for your life and your work, what you want to stand for, and so forth. And I'm sure if you do that exercise, you'll be inspired, self-inspired, and motivated to do some things that will make your life better and rewrite whatever part of your inner story that needs to be rewritten. So grateful to be with you. And whenever I come and visit with people in person, I just love it. I love your energy, and keep it up. And see you next time.